one problem did you say well, I think we have issues in the United States with our testing for accountability, and that we want every student to succeed, so every student gets the same test. But I think it would be much better if they did what's called matrix sampling, and different students got different tests. Now, what that would tell you is that some students, the scores can't be compared, but you would have a good sense of what students as a whole are learning, so you could test more things than you can test each individual child. So if they could test with matrix sampling, I think that would be a help for accountability purposes. I also think there are some problems in K-12 testing. In some local places, like in New York City, people worry about testing their kids to get into the right kindergarten so that they can go to the right public school or private school, and then they can go to the right private high school, and then they can go to the right private college. And I think that puts a lot of pressure on young children to succeed on tests. So those would be some of the things I think that are problematic in the K-6 testing situation. I also think right now in the United States there's much talk about evaluating teachers based on how their students do on tests. And we don't have much information. That has not been studied enough to do that quickly. So that's another concern that I have right now about testing in the public schools. I can mention a few things that I've seen in my life that I think are misuses of tests. One common problem is when students in the elementary grades especially are not succeeding in school, they are given an individual assessment by a school psychologist. That's a very good thing. But there are some misuses. So, for example, years ago I was involved in a study of large-scale testing, and one of the things that we found was this one parent was being interviewed and asked about how her son had done on test, and she, out of her purse, she pulls a postcard that she'd received from the school district, and it was a postcard that gave her the results of her son's testing, and on a postcard it said that her child was retarded. Now, I find that really a terrible misuse of tests. That's the kind of thing the psychologist should have brought the parent in, should have had a long discussion with them, talked about what their options were, what different things, and to do it on a postcard to me just seemed a terrible misuse of tests. I've worked quite a bit on the graduate record exam, which you have a test here in Saudi Arabia that's much like that. It's for admission into graduate education programs. But where I first taught at Fordham University in New York City, we would spend a lot of time on students as they were moving through their graduate program. And so very often we would have some students who, when we were trying to decide if they should go on and work for the doctorate after their master's degree, that we would be debating it, whether this person had the talent to succeed. And someone would always say, well, how did they do on the graduate record exam? And my feeling is we'd had them in school already for 2 years. The graduate record exam was a test that was to predict how well they did. Now we actually had good data on how well they had actually done. And so to evaluate those same students based on a test that they probably took 3 years earlier did not seem like a good way to evaluate them, in my opinion. So those are two possible misuses. Of course, it's possible that there are tests that different groups of people score differently on, and I think you need to study that and understand why. And one of the great psychologists I worked with early in my career, Ann Anastasi, always said that the reason for when a student gets a low score, the question should be why. And you have to try to figure out for each individual student, why did they not score better? Is it because they're not doing their homework? Is it because they have a home environment issue? They're not being fed well? There's lots of different possibilities. Or are they just perhaps not very interested in their schoolwork? So, and I don't think we do that very often. We just give tests and get the scores and that's it. And I think asking the question why would be very useful. I think sometimes people are using all of their ability largely, and they're still not succeeding. I think it's unfortunate, at least in American society, I can't speak about Saudi society, but in American society, people all want to be doctors and lawyers, and nobody wants to be a test construction expert, but everybody wants to be a doctor or a lawyer or something professional. And for some people, they really should be a plumber or an electrician or something, and those are good jobs. They make good money. And we need people in lots of professions, so I think people shouldn't feel bad if they don't succeed in school. They should find the things that they really enjoy and try to do those things.